Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are in the world. We're broadcasting to 100 countries today. Wherever you are, we really hope you're safe and well and looking forward to our content today. Soccerex connected 100 in 100 countries throughout the world. So what are we talking about today? Well, we focus on a fascinating day's content, health and performance analysis. Well, what does that mean? We're looking at training and performance methods. We're looking at recruitment. We're looking at health. And all importantly, we're looking at data analysis. You'll hear from the leaders in the industry, from the world's top clubs, the world's top leagues, and the world's federations as well. Also, by popular demand, if you were with us last time a couple of weeks ago, we've got some fascinating interviews in between our panels. We'll be speaking to the super agent, John Viola, who's got his own agent's course. We'll be speaking to John a little bit later on. We'll be speaking to the former Liverpool and Tottenham player, got an amazing story to tell. Paul Walsh will be with us in a couple of hours' time. We'll be speaking to the Sunday Mirror's John Richardson, Journalist of the Year in 2019. He wrote the best-selling book called Our Gaza, which is, of course, very topical now during the Euros as well. And we'll be speaking to the former Celtic and Aston Villa captain, Stiliyan Petrov. Now then, what else have I got to tell you about? Well, before our first panel, a cause which I'm sure is very close to Stiliyan's heart, Cure Leukemia, the charity partner for Soccerex Connected 100. Well, what is this all about? Well, Jeff Thomas, the former Crystal Palace and England midfielder, is actually riding the Tour de France, raising money for leukemia. Jeff, obviously a sufferer himself, happily now cured and doing this amazing ride. We want you to get involved to support the cause Cure Leukemia. Now, he's embarked on the Tour de France course already. He's on stage 4. In a couple of weeks' time, we're hoping Jeff will join us to tell us all about it as well. What we'd love you to do is head over to the Cure Leukemia exhibition booth. It's all on the website. All the details are there. We've got an amazing silent auction where you can bid for some incredible prizes. A trip to the Masters, Harry Kane signed boots. If somebody bids for those, he might even score a goal. Who knows? And we've got a host of signed shirts as well. Let me have a look at these for you. You can bid in the silent auction for Juan Sebastian Veron, the little witch, signed shirt, number 18, Argentina. Yep, still got his sweat on it. There's no doubt about that. Jean-Pierre Papin, the famous French forward, a signed shirt from Jean-Pierre Papin. Go over to the silent auction. It's all for Cure Leukemia. It's an amazing cause, and there's some amazing items to bid for as well. Okay, without further ado, it's on to our first panel of the day. It's entitled Rest versus Reps. Getting the pre-season for all football clubs, all sporting clubs, absolutely spot on. Now, the last year has seen the strains of a disrupted schedule run rampant through squads. This panel will look to explore how teams have come out of the rough patch and how they can undo the wrongs of the previous year. Delighted to introduce, speaking with us today, Paolo Rongoni, Head of Strength and Conditioning at Olympique Lyon, Richard Collange, Medical at West Ham United, Juan Mona, First Team Strength and Conditioning Coach at Valencia, Andrea Ribali, a professor at the University of Milan, and finally, Andrew Shafiq of the FMPA and of Millwall Football Club as well. Andrew, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the nice introduction and a brilliant topic to discuss today with some expert speakers. I think just to get things started, first of all, we should ask about some of the challenges and the lessons that were learned from last year and the pre-season, which was different across Europe. And I'd like to put that question initially to Paolo to get his views on his experiences with his time at Lyon.
My experience was completely different to the other last year, because in the 30th April, the government stopped the Ligue 1 and the lockdown was for 12 weeks. The the problem in compared with other country is we completely stop the Ligue 1 and they don't restart this season. And when they start the training, we have basically three problems. First problem was the prevention of COVID and the injury, because when we couldn't see around the other country, every country have a big number of injury in the championship. And when we restart, when we restart, we need to think about a progressive load for don't have injury in this preseason. And the third problem was to be ready to play Champions League, because we don't play game for 4 months and we are able to play Champions League games and the final League Cup. And effectively, in this complicated situation, we had done, in my opinion, my best preseason in my career. This is strange, but it's there, because with 4 weeks of general preparation, 1 week of rest, and 3 weeks with specific training, we don't have injury. We have no case of COVID, and we have a very good result in Champions League for Lyon. And I think the put 1 week rest in the middle of the preseason was the key for the success, because the player are work very hard in the first part because they want to live in holiday, and after 1 week rest they completely focus on the Champions League, on the final. And this situation help the squad, help the team to do a very good season this year. And for me, the experience was good, but it was completely different, because we don't finish last season, and we need to think about new solution for have the best result in the Champions League final 8. This is my little experience, and I'm sure in the future, in the next preseason, we will use the same strategy. I think it's better if the player do a short period of holiday. We work hard, we give 1 week rest, and we restart with the specific training with the ball for the last period. For me, it was a good experience, this moment.
Brilliant, thank you, Paolo. And I'd be interested to hear the thoughts of Richard, who I know at West Ham had a different course of season with events in England, and maybe how that also affected kind of the work with rehabbing injured players. So over to you, Richard.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Andrew. And hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Yeah, I think as Paolo said there, we had to be particularly agile. We had to do things differently, Andrew. I think football generally does what football's always done. So we had to think outside of the box, very much so. And as you alluded to there, certainly we had players that were carrying injuries into, what turned out to be a 14-week lockdown period. That meant it was lots of Zoom calls, as we're doing now, or Teams calls. So we had to remotely manage our players. We'd had one player that had just had a surgery, literally the day before the nation went into lockdown. So we had to find a way to work with him to make sure his wound was kept clean, to get some basic rehabilitation going. So yeah, we had to think differently. We had to work differently. We also have to remember that we didn't quite know in England how long the Premier League was going to be paused for. So yeah, looking back at my notes, yeah, we had a 14-week period between our Arsenal game on the 7th of March going into the Wolves game on the 20th of June when the Premier League kicked in again. So yeah, we had to keep the injured players fit. There were, the equivalent of our Joe Wicks type sessions where we had to keep the group fit, but also we tried to integrate the injured players in with that group as well. So we had to engender camaraderie amongst the group, keeping the injured players, the fit players, and also the staff involved. And also, let's not forget, we weren't just dealing with the physical problems, the psychological element of COVID and what was going on. The uncertainty was rife across the group, so we had to kind of deal with that aspect as well, Andrew.
Brilliant, and it's good to get kind of experiences there from France and from England. But I'm sure that there's much more to be shared from our compatriots in Valencia. So Juana, it'd be interesting to hear about kind of your views on the challenges and lessons from the year that's passed, and what kind of you can take forward from the learnings of COVID, shall we say.
Well, hello, everyone. First of all, we have to be thankful that our lockdown period was really short, no more than 7 weeks. And the main thinking in our case is that first of all, we have to look for our national schedules, because we have to try to see more to other leagues with 18 teams in the league instead of 20 or 22 like we have in the second division, so that we have a schedule that lets us more liberty to change things in this case. But in what the training concerns, in our case, the thing is that we had very little incidents in injuries. So for the next preseason, we almost did a normal preseason. Of course, taking into account that, like the colleague said, that our whole staff had to be involved in any situation, because we had to pay attention in any COVID case. And in this case, of course, we had protocols that we didn't have before. But as we said, in our case, we didn't experience nothing very different to what we had in other preseasons.
Brilliant, man. And over to you, Andrea. What were your experiences kind of from the challenges and the lessons learned over this period?
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone. Our experience was very different than the previous one. It was very different from the experience from France that Paolo highlighted, because we're in Italy, the championship restart after a long lockdown period. And our pre-season probably was in that period when we had to perform some individualized training activities with the players before to restart the championship, even if when the next championship started, because after the championship, the final matches of the championship, or the final matches of a European competition in the 2020, where we have only a short break to prepare the player, and we have a short break for holidays. So it was only a period for rest, and then we start with a different type of pre-season than the other one. In Italy, usually we have a lot of week to prepare the players, and sometimes we use also some general activities, general type of exercise with prescribed training, also using running-based exercises, not only sport-specific drills to prepare cardiovascular activities, to prepare the performance from a neuromuscular point of view or other. But in this case, our pre-season were in the period after lockdown, and when the season started, we needed to perform more specific activities, try to prepare the player in a short period of time, and so was very different. And so, in my opinion, was quite a long season that started after lockdown. So we did pre-season after lockdown with individual exercises for each players, and then we started the season, finishing the first one and starting without stop the next one. So very completely different than the previous experience and the previous season.
That's really interesting to hear kind of some of the main challenges faced, some that are common across the board and others that are unique to individual leagues. What I'd quite like to know is what you guys think of the league setup and some of the changes that occurred in relation to substitutions, in relations to drinks breaks. Were they positive? Were they negative? And what your views were? And are these aspects that should be continued? So I'd like to pose that question initially to Richard and get your point of view on it.
Yeah, I think, thanks for the question, Andrew. We very much went into those last 9 games as a tournament mentality, because we were playing Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday equivalent, which was quite new to our club at that moment in time. We're obviously playing through June and July and the kind of hottest weather, not as hot as some parts of the world, I appreciate that, but say with our own stadium being a bowl setup, then obviously the humidity and the heat in the stadium, certainly with some of the kickoff times that we had, was intense. So in terms of reducing the risk of injury and helping with hydration, then certainly the increased number of substitutes that we could use and the increased number of players on the bench, the squad size, was a very sensible strategy by the Premier League. And obviously, we had the drinks breaks halfway through each half. So I think that's obviously dependent on temperature, humidity in different times of the year. But that's certainly something that I see in the Euros right now. So I think at that moment in time, for those 9 games, it was the right thing to do, Andrew. It's a very sensible strategy from the drinks breaks and the increased number of substitutions.
Thanks, Richard. And Juan, obviously, a completely different climate, shall we say, to us over here in the UK. What were your experiences over in Spain?
In case of the substitutions, for us, it was positive to not only to have these 5 substitutions, to have also the whole squad at the games, because it was more easy to control the training, the post training that the squad had to do after the games. For us was perfect. Concerning the drink breaks, yes, because of the climate. So of course here is everything well prepared in order to do 1 or also 2 drink breaks because of the weather. Also, we had every single game late at the day. Another thing I think it's important that we did in the academy. It was a protocol that we did for the under 90s, under 16s, and under 14s. We stayed a protocol inside the club in order to the teams to make 2 substitutions fixed in the halftime, and do every substitutions 20 minutes before the end of the games. In under 16s, also with 1 substitution in the halftime, and 15 minutes before every substitution has to be done. And of course, in all the under 19 and the 17, we gave more liberty to do this kind of substitutions, because it's easy to understand that the more competition level, the less internal protocols we have to put in the actions.
It's really interesting to hear some of the changes, not only in senior football but in academy football as well. Andrea, what were your kind of views on this?
About a coaching staff point of view, I believe that the number of substitution, the increase of number of substitution, change some also technical and tactical approach, because the coaches have to take into account a lot of different aspects also during the matches, because the opposite squad could change a lot of player, a lot of tactical aspects, and also our squad could change a lot of tactical aspects, and we need and the coaches and the coaching staff should consider a lot of the different aspects. Also from a physical point of view, the increased number of substitution changed something in the day after, and the training load management of our players, because playing every 3 days with more than 3 substitution, with some players that play 60 minutes, 50 minutes, this change also the supplementary activities in the same day of the matches or in the day after. So the change of number of substitution, in my opinion, change a little bit the rule of training load management, but also in the technical and tactical performance development and the consideration of the coach, because they have to consider a lot of different aspects during the matches.
Brilliant. And Paolo, what did you think on obviously we know, and you mentioned that there wasn't that continuation in France, but it'd still be interesting to hear your thoughts on the substitutions, the drink breaks, and how that's affected this season. and maybe what should happen thereafter?
For me, firstly, I want to say I think UEFA give a good solution, because when we speak to drinks break, I think this break is necessary, but not for the performance. This break is necessary for the health to the player. When you play with more to 28 or 30 degrees with high humidity, this is no problem for performance. I think this is a problem for the health, and they need to respect the body to the player. After I agree with Andrea. 5 substitution change completely the management to the coaches, you know, and I think it's better for the coaches, because the player can play more, and the ambience inside the squad is better, you know. The reserve have more time to play, and in the dressing room the atmosphere is good. And second, of course, everyone know the last 50 minutes in the games are very expensive for the player and tiring. And when you play every 3 days and you have 2 substitution more, it's more interesting. That's sure. The problem, Andrea said, is for the sports scientists this year we need to completely change the average, because half team go out in the final of the game, and you need to start to think for the charge and for the load. But if I'm honestly, it's not very democratic, because because if you want, this year we won more game, because we don't have a big difference between start and reserve. And when you have a big club and you have this, and it's more probably you win when you have 5 substitution. Small club with low budget don't have this opportunity. This is, in my head, this is clear, but I think 5 substitution, it's a good idea, and for the health and for reduce injury.
It's interesting to hear you there, Paolo, talking about obviously the bigger clubs benefiting a little bit more from, you know, these greater substitutions, having that strength and depth in the squad, and really being able to utilise that. We've kind of discussed, obviously, you know, challenges and lessons learned from this past season, maybe rehabbing injured players, some of the difficulties, some of the changes in the leagues. But you highlighted a really interesting point about player welfare. And I think the next point that I would kind of like to raise and get the experts' views on is some of the protocols that have been introduced over the last year, whether that is in relation to COVID positive players, whether that's in relation to load management and reducing injury risk. So I'm interested to learn a little bit more about that. And I'd like to start with you, Juan, just to tell us a little bit about the protocols that have been introduced where you are, and the differences that they've made.
Okay. So in our case, we had in the whole club, we had two protocols, depending, of course, like I said before, on the team level. The first team, reserves team, had 1 protocol, and every team under 19 had another one. The first team and the reserves, when there were 1 or 2 positives, they go into quarantine. We have to be thankful that we had never more than 2 positives in a row. Every player has enough stuff at home in order to attend the sessions we provide them. And in case not, of course, the club gives the player the stuff that he needs. As soon as he can return to the sports center, he starts individual training until he's ready to join the group. And the first training of the rest of the team after this positive case, of course, is individual. And after a negative PCR test, we can continue the collective training. I said that about the case that in academy, there is the rest of the academy, there's 1 positive, everyone was going home for 10 days. So the whole team went 10 days, and this was not a good experience. But this was managed because of the rules that the regional federation had done to the team. So it was more difficult.
That's interesting. And how about yourself, Andrea? What are some of the kind of protocols that were introduced, whether that's in relation to COVID positive players or kind of other protocols that were introduced over the past year?
About the protocol for firstly, it's important to highlight that there is not a great scientific evidence about the good training prescription after a COVID protocol. So we need to take into account a lot of different aspects, try to monitoring to better understand the feeling of the player during the training after COVID. In my experience, I had the fortune to work with players that don't have any symptom, and so they had the opportunity to maintain their individual activities also when they stay at home or when they stay at the training ground, because we had different buildings with different rooms with different pitches, so the player could maintain their fitness for over that period. And then when they return to work individually on the pitch, they can work and to improve their athlete's ability and their cardiovascular and neurovascular in individual way, trying to, we don't have the right training prescription, because as I said, we don't have great scientific evidence nowadays, probably in the future, but we needed to take into account the feeling of each player, trying to better understand their wellness and help them to prepare themselves to return with the squad. So I think that this period with individual activities could be looked as a strength to help players to increase their individual abilities or to work with some limitation on their physical activities, or only to help them to maintain their fitness to be prepared to return to the squad.
Brilliant, thank you, Andrea. And Paolo, what are some of the kind of protocols that were put in place over at your club in Lyon?
Yes. First, I want to say thank you to Jean-Marc, the team doctor, because it was strict and heavy, but this management is necessary, and we don't have cluster inside the team, and this is more important, and a small number of cases. The protocol was every time when we had an infection, the group was divided in 4 mini groups with different hours training for 3 days. And after we restart to train, this is for prevent the infection. Every day for 5 days, we did a molecular test. And if the player wasn't symptomatic, they restart with a general training very low after 5 days, but without run. If the player was sick, they stay completely rest for 15 days. Before the first training, the normally player did the heart assessment and pulmonary scan. And for restart the workout, the player need the consensus of the doctor naturally. And after 2 individual workout, we did a general assessment in anaerobic shoulder for see the performance of the performance pulmonary, the height intensity test for seeing the buffering system, and finally a test with the force platform. In my experience, the player post the COVID have 2 different profiles. First profile are the player with several muscles Sorensen, and when you have this type to profile, you need to put more attention on the charge. Okay, it's very important. Second profile is with the player have a problem to breathing, And in this case, you need to put more attention on the recovery time after the training and between one training and another training. The intensity, you need to put a low intensity. But one point is clear in my head: the COVID it's not a flu, and we need to be reactive when one player have COVID, because every time they have problem, no 5 or 10 days after, but 1 month later. And we need to be very, very reactive on his health and on his load, principally.
Brilliant, thanks, Paolo. And how about yourself, Richard? Some of the kind of protocols used in the English football system?
Yeah, I'd say the learning curve has been incredibly steep, Andrew. I'd say it continues to climb. Like Paolo was saying there, I think we still need to be diligent. We still need to be incredibly proactive and likewise reactive to what's in front of us. I would congratulate the Premier League for the protocols that they put in place. That certainly helped to reassure myself and my job. The skill was then applying those protocols into our training ground and what was local to us at West Ham United Football Club. And again, that's important when you consider, the size of the training ground, the footprint of the training ground, the movement of players around the training ground, as compared to maybe a larger training facility in the Premier League. So everyone's environment is very much different and individualised. Luckily, the year before, we'd looked at hygiene strategies, Andrew. So we'd looked at positioning hand gels around the building, and that was a blessing in disguise. So we'd started to educate. We'd looked at stuff like the nutrition the season before as well. That also helped us. What was an additional challenge was obviously the testing, and we were doing the PCR testing twice weekly to start with. That reduced down to once weekly, then went back up to twice weekly around December, January time onwards, I recall. That was a hindrance to the scheduling. Maybe on days off, the manager wanted to schedule a day off, we had to bring the players in for testing. So that kind of hindered the planning and where the manager wanted to go with the condition of the players. I think there are challenges now moving forwards as to where we go with the testing, and there's been lots of reading, lots of protocols to go along with. But again, I congratulate the Premier League because I think everyone's confidence was built to a level that we went from individual training, one player in, one player out at the training facility, to full group, full contact training and finishing off the season last year successfully. So that's a huge amount of credit to Mark Gillett and the Premier League. And I'm now intrigued to see where we go with what looks like it's going to be lateral flow testing as opposed to the PCR testing twice weekly, and how the protocols look for next season.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Richard. I think, all four of you have highlighted some great points there. I suppose from my own personal experience, we know that COVID can cause critical illness in 15%, debilitating illness in 15%, and critical illness in 4 to 5% of cases. And we know that from those 4 to 5%, 20% can get myocardial injury. So although we're carrying out cardiac screening for those returning to play in the senior game for what is such a small percentage, it's vital because of how sinister some of the effects of the myocardial injury can be. And I think all these protocols that have come into place have had their role to play, and they've been brilliant. I suppose that leads on really well onto the next kind of topic, where by how things will change and how things might advance from now on with the effects of the pandemic. And I'd be interested to hear from you, Richard, initially on your views with vaccinations and how they may affect things.
Yeah, I think that is the next challenge, really, Andrew, that I foresee. And what I mean by that is we have players away at the Euros at the minute that are being offered jabs with their international teams. So obviously, if you're going to do a first jab now in June, when are you going to get the second jab? Is that going to be led by the international federations, or as a club, do we do the second vaccination? Which vaccinations are going to be administered? So depending on where you are in the world, you might be exposed to different vaccinations, obviously. We also have to consider the human rights element of this as well, in terms of players and staff might decline to have a vaccine. So I do foresee confusion. I foresee we will have players and staff returning next week at our club that have had no vaccine, have had one vaccine, and will have had 2 vaccines. And there might be teams trying to plan foreign travel for pre-season. That obviously brings about its own issues, and we're keeping a very close eye on government restrictions as things stand. And also, say for ourselves as a club, how do we prepare for a European venture, the Europa League this year? What does that mean for travel restrictions in that regard, Andrew? So, yeah, I think the vaccination side of things is complex, and it's going to be fascinating to see the mindset of players and staff when we return next week as to where that leads.
It's brilliant. What about yourself, Juan, and some of the kind of vaccination question marks over in Spain?
As Richard said, of course we are very hopeful that the situations get established. And so in this case, in Spain, the order of being getting the vaccine is the age. Of course, we are not so far away like other countries in Europe. And like I said, the problem will be that what will be if one player has 1, 2, or probably in this case 3 vaccines, and how we can manage with everything. We just hope that the COVID cases should not be stable and go down. And we hope that, like I said, that the players can, in the middle of the seasons, can be protected. But of course, we have to care about the next steps.
Thank you, Juan. And I suppose a slightly different curveball, but something that's become, very much in fruition, and a topic that's always a hot topic, and kind of the mental health and the psychological effects of how the pandemic's affected not only the world but athletes. Paolo, I suppose it would be interesting to get your thoughts on, how we can, as members of the S&C team, sports science team, the medical team, how can we try and address some of these issues, and what are some of the challenges that have been faced from a psychological and a mental health point of view that potentially you've seen?
Yeah, this is not easily. I don't know why we have a psychological problem in 2 cases in Lyon. I don't know why, but you see two players. We have 10 players affected to the COVID, and the 2 players change completely our behavior. I don't know why. I try to speak about a little bit my former doctor in other teams, and they have the same case. 1 or 2 players change completely the behavior. Maybe I think stress. 1, 2 guys have more stressed with the psychological aspect. This is logic when the player stay in. Normally, 1 player train, come back at home, and we can go out for evacuate the stress, because when you play every 3 games, when you are a professional player, the stress it's a big component in your performance. And in this period, the guys every time stay in his phone, they read the social media, and only is focused on the football. And I think this is a problem in this situation. After, why 1 or 2 player change or behavior, or why? Because it's more excited. 1 player or 2 player after the COVID is more excited. I don't know why. Maybe because the recovery is very long. Maybe because it's possible you have a inflammatory process in this infection. I don't know. I'm not able for speaking about. I think Richard is more knowledge to me, but the psychological aspect it was important. And after you play without fans in the stadium, this is another factor. This is an important factor. We win a lot of time outside. Why? Because the other have a technical level much lower to our, and when you don't have fans, it's more easy to win. The club or the team with the more high technical level is facilitate to win, and this is an aspect to this situation.
That's interesting, Paolo, and I think it's definitely we'd all be in agreement that the home advantage isn't what it once was under playing with empty stadiums with no fans. Andrea, what do you think about the kind of psychological aspects? Has it affected the way you're maybe creating programming for athletes, or has there been an influence in your practice based on this psychological aspect of the pandemic and how it's affected players and teams?
Honestly, I believe that the psychological aspect was a popular problem, not only for soccer players, because we soccer players and coaching staff in football should have some restriction, and this restriction could affect some psychological aspect, because to stay at home for a lot of period of time, to train themselves at home, it's not easy for players, it's not easy for a coaching staff to share information, so this could provide some psychological problem, and for sure also playing without fun could be quite different from some team for another one to perform as better as possible. But to be honest, I think that we were a category with a great fortune, because we could restart our work. We could work in a period in which a lot of workers lose their work, or there was some health problem around the world. So I think that psychological aspect for soccer players should be only a few part, and the situation was good that for other workers. So we need to take into account always our fortune as practitioner in sport, because we could restart, at least in Italy, our work, we could maintain our position. So also the psychological effect of this situation should be considered.
Brilliant, thanks, Andrea. We've had a few questions in, and so I think it's time to address some of these questions from the audience. And the first question is specifically for you, Richard, from Fabio. And he said, West Ham have had a fantastic season, which brings new challenges for you. Already you have one of the smaller squads in the Premier League. How will your preparations change with a Europa League campaign?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. We're certainly cognizant that we are a small squad. We're looking at going into Europa League campaign where we'll have certainly 6 initial games, and let's hope that progresses beyond Christmas into a new schedule and obviously progression through the cup competition. Obviously there is recruitment that goes beyond the scope of my role, but the club will be looking to invest, I'm sure, to bolster the squad. We're certainly looking at the age spread across the squad currently and injury history. And yeah, we certainly know we need to strengthen certain areas to make the players. I do feel the lockdown period, Andrew, made them more resilient and more robust. So I think we're carrying through fitter, more athletic players to start with. But yeah, recruitment's also going to be key to make sure that we can turn the players around for what's going to be a tough schedule ahead of us.
Brilliant, thanks, Richard. And we've got another question from Jason for the panel generally, and he's asked, how much do major tournaments hurt your plannings? Or is it a case of wait and see what you get left with? We'll start with you, Juan, and we'll try and get round to the rest of the panel and see what they think about that.
Didn't get the question.
So the question essentially was, how much do major tournaments hurt your planning, or is it a case of wait and see what you're left with at the end of a major international tournament?
Okay. Well, in our case, we just had 2 tournaments, the cup and the league, and the thing is, in comparison with other teams, the number of tournaments didn't impact in our team too much. So I think it's more easy in such a situation just to work in 3 weeks in very clean weeks instead of 2 days weeks. And we had only 6 examples in this case. So in our situations, the tournaments didn't impact too much in our performance.
Brilliant. And how about yourself, Paolo? How do the kind of major competitions, is there certain planning you have in place for after the Euros, depending on, where the situation may be with player availability?
Yeah, the problem is not only the Euro Cup, because we have player in Americans Cup, and maybe we have normally 4 players leave for the Olympics game. This is the problem. This is for me the problem for the schedule. But they need to receive the player, give a good assessment when they come back, and establish with the coach a good program for don't start directly with 90 minutes. I think it's important. After, it depends if the player play the game in the Euro, don't play the game. This is change completely your vision. This is depend more to the player. If one guy is play every time and for all the Euro and arrive to the final, he need to have a rest. I have a very, very bad experience with the 3 players. They won the World Cup, they play the World Cup, and they won the World Cup. And when they come back for 2 months, it's completely off in the mind and physically. This is this is the experience. You need to take rest. For me, it's more important. Take rest and restart easily with no very hard charge and with progressive load. This is my experience.
Brilliant. And it sounds like rest and recover is the motto there, just to get kind of re-energized, ready for the next season. Any quick thoughts, Andrea, just before we finish, just to get your viewpoint on how major competitions can affect practice?
No, I agree with Paolo, because I believe that we need to have a very individualized approach, collecting and sharing information with national team after the Euro, to have information about the training load, more in specific also about training, not only about matches, to better understand the situation of each players, and spoke with them, try to test them to have a clear idea about their situation. But we need to consider a very individualized approach. A similar situation happened also during usual pre-season, when an athlete come at the end of the transfer market, for example, a few weeks before to start the season. So we need to have a great individualized approach.
That's brilliant, and thanks, Andrea. I think we've learned a lot there about kind of how the last year has affected some of our various leagues, from listening to practitioners across the major European leagues there in Italy, France, and also in Spain and in England. I think it's fair to say that there's been many challenges, but there's been lots of lessons that have been learned, and I hope that that's been useful to our listeners there. And I'd like to thank all our expert speakers and all our listeners, and back to you in the studio.